Which would you choose? Lots of people have asked this question before, but what's better? An old S21 Ultra or a brand new Galaxy S24 FE? Yesterday's flagship or today's mid-range flagship? Let's go. I'm really going to struggle in this video because the Galaxy S21 Ultra was peak Samsung design, owning the camera bump and offering all of the best hardware and specs in this sleek, sophisticated looking package blew me away the year it came out. Whereas on this side, the S24 FE is just a really bland, basic sort of offering in terms of its design and its aesthetic. But design doesn't really make the entire experience, but it is where I'd like to start. I think based on that opening, you can already tell I'm a little bit biased towards the S21 Ultra, especially the Phantom Black colorway. I've got the Phantom Silver here, but the Phantom Black just really owned and sort of completed the look that this package offered. The way the camera bump seamlessly melded into the frame, the way it sort of had this block that sort of owned how many cameras were in there, the really nice feeling matte glass, the curves at the back, the subtle curves on the front. It had this really nice in-hand aesthetic to go with the design. Everything about it screamed premium, and something that I really miss in Samsung's design strategy now is they're not really as bold as they used to be. This was a statement and turned a lot of heads at the time. It felt worth the price tag just based on the design alone. The S24 FE, it's just uninspiring to look at. Like, it's very clean, it's very minimal, it's got the floating cameras that has become Samsung's signature now, but it's sort of glossy glass back and aluminium frame and glass on the front. There's nothing signature about it. There's nothing that sort of, I did say that the floating cameras were signature, but there's nothing inspiring. Nothing that makes you want to feel like you've spent hard-earned money on a nice bit of kit. In terms of size, as far as their size design goes, there's actually no difference realistically. The S21 Ultra is potentially slightly taller. In the hand, this feels better straight away. So on design alone, the S21 Ultra wins hands down. Display, on the other hand, the gap begins to narrow. The S21 Ultra was punchy as hell. It had bright, vivid colors. Like, you could see the contrast of the colors. It was bright and punchy. I've said that already, but they just were. Like, you can see it on the screen. Everything pops out and so vivid. It really put the vivid in the vivid color option that Samsung gave you. The S24 FE is a little bit more muted and more balanced. It's a bit more mature, I would say. And that's a great thing, because I think a lot of people said that Samsung displays were a little bit too hectic on the colors, and Samsung has sort of toned it down as the years have sort of gone on. And the S24 FE definitely brings Samsung's better technology now onto their, I guess, mid-range flagship phone, and I think the gap sort of closes a little bit. They've both got 120 Hz refresh rate displays, so you won't sort of notice too much of a difference. The only thing might be the performance, which we'll get to a little bit later. The other part, though, that the S21 Ultra does better is the ultrasonic fingerprint scanner. It's in a better location, it's much quicker, and I much prefer that technology over the optical fingerprint scanner on the FE. But overall, I think the FE shades it on display because it is newer and it's a bit more natural looking. Next up is the cameras. And on paper, you might think that the S21 Ultra will just win hands down, but that's not necessarily the actual case. Looking at the hardware first, on paper, yeah, this is pretty much won. It's got a ultra-wide camera with macro autofocus capabilities. It has a massive 108 megapixel main camera. That's a 1 in 1.3 inch size. And then you've also got a laser autofocus module to pair with it. You have the 3x telephoto and a 10x telephoto, rectifying what looked like a mistake on the S20 Ultra, when really it actually wasn't. It's neither here nor there. And this 3x and 10x stayed relevant all the way up until the S23 Ultra, even if there were some optimizations as far as software goes as years went on. But they still very much a relevant hardware pretty much up until last year. The S24 FE has really only one good camera on paper, this main one. The 50 megapixel main camera is a 1 in 1.56 sensor size. So whilst it's not bigger than the S21 Ultra, still is big enough. And it's the same main sensor that's on the Galaxy S24 and S24 Plus. The two cameras either side of that though, disappointing. The ultra wide and the 3x, very old, very ancient cameras. They're not the same as the ultra wide and the 3x on the S21 Ultra. They're different and worse. So that's how it is on paper. But how is it in execution? We're going to jump over here now to the Viewfinity S9 monitor, and we're going to take a bit of a look in 5K at the photo difference and some of the video differences between these. All right, I'm standing here now in front of the Viewfinity S9, the 5K display. Fantastic monitor, honestly. Cannot recommend this enough. That's not the point of this. What I'm looking at here for the first time is the photos out of the S21 Ultra and the S24 FE. The way I'm going to be breaking this down is I'm going to first start with the ultra wide, which I've got up on the screen now. Then I'm going to look at the 1 and the 2 times results, then look at the zoom, and then finish off with video. Starting off with the ultra wide, and this is the first time I'm reacting to these. I haven't looked at these yet. I've only looked at them on the phone, so it's not quite accurate enough. As far as ultra wide goes, in this super bright daytime environment, the thing I noticed immediately is there's some, I guess, tonal differences. The sky on the S24 FE here on the right, you can see is a lot bluer, and it's a different shade of blue compared to what we have on the S21 Ultra. In terms of detail, I'm not noticing that much difference, to be honest. I thought I was going to, especially with the inferior ultra wide hardware on the S24 FE. Maybe in the foreground we might notice something here. Let's have a look. That doesn't look appropriate. In any case, there's not really much difference. The people sitting down there have a bit of a different skin tone, a bit of a darker, more sort of contrasty skin tone. That's really about it. We can take a look at this next one here, and immediately the thing that jumps out at me is the color in the leaves. You've got the really darker green here on the S24 FE versus a bit lighter. The box, there's a bit more light in it on the S21 Ultra, but also a lot more noise, which I find strange. Outside of that, again, those tonal differences with the sky still exist. Going to the next one here, it's a very similar picture, except for maybe slightly lighter areas with the S21 Ultra, and that's probably where things like the dual pixel autofocus that it has on the ultra wide comes into play, because you can see sort of more light and a bit more detail in some of the darker areas. I then took it to the football last night, hence wearing my Australia jersey to watch the Matildas play Brazil. And the thing I noticed a lot here is how much better the processing is on the S24 FE as opposed to the S21 Ultra. The S21 Ultra just doesn't really handle the lights too well. The S24 FE doesn't do amazing, but it brings the contrast of the night sky that was evident in your real life a bit more out. Outside of that though, there's a tonal difference in the pitch. It probably, to be honest, was more representative on the S21 Ultra. The pitch was in terrible condition. Next up, we have the 1 times and then the 2 times crop. I wanted to test 2 times because I wanted to see how the high resolution crop makes a difference, because the S21 Ultra didn't have that. Even though it had a 108 megapixel sensor, Samsung didn't implement the higher crop. It just sort of scaled in from 12 megapixel. Anyway, the same color differences exist in the sky. That's pretty much evident straight away. The detail wise, I'm not noticing too much. Again, if we zoom in on the planks of wood here, the S24 FE, when you zoom in, far better on the detail, even with things like the writing and the boat. You can see, skipped ahead, a lot more with the S24 FE. Probably a lot to do with the newer sensor, upgraded hardware, and also it's got dual pixel autofocus, whereas the S21 Ultra doesn't. Going to the 2 times from the same spot, what's going to be really curious to me is to see how the detail gets preserved on the S24 FE. And yeah, immediately, it's not a drastic difference, and you probably won't notice that in sort of without pixel peeping, but you do see it. Like at the boat area with the speed on how fast boats need to go, you can definitely see there's a bit more detail preserved with the S24 FE as opposed to what there has been with S21 Ultra. And a lot of that is down to the fact that the 2 times camera, you can even see it here, you can see the writing, whereas you can't on the S21 Ultra. Another 1 times photo, this is kind of me wanting to test the depth of field, the bokeh, the natural bokeh, and the S21 Ultra kind of has more. And I think that's a lot down to the fact the sensor size is larger. The S24 FE isn't doing too bad. It's got a bit of a natural depth of field about it, but it's not to the same degree as what the S21 Ultra has. As far as detail goes in this photo, I think the S24 FE has it, to be honest. Processing wise, it's just those same sky tonal differences. You can really sort of tell that when you sort of go in closer. Another one-time shot here. Again, what I can see from this one is the foreground has more detail with the FE, whereas the foreground of the Ultra doesn't. Probably sensor size related, again, creating that bokeh effect. I mean, realistically, you're not gaining or losing much depending on which phone you had. It's just some processing differences and some slight detail differences here and there, at least in the extreme daytime. The same thing that happened at the ultra wide with the lights happened with the one times with the Ultra. It's not bad. Like, I think this is, actually no, it is pretty bad. It's pretty washed out. The lights kind of wash everything out, whereas the FE, it's a bit more balanced with how it looks. The contrast is there. I probably prefer it. In terms of detail, it's a bit lighter in the foreground here on the Ultra. Again, probably to do with being washed out, whereas the FE kind of didn't really lift those darker areas. It prioritized in the background. And that was the 1 and the 2 times differences. The thing I was really curious about though was the 3 times camera, and then the 10 times on the Ultra, to see if software has kind of made up for it in the years that have gone by. This is the 3 times camera, comparing each other. To be honest, I didn't think I'd say this, but the S24 FE, I prefer the shot. The sky is more realistic. The sky looks a bit too light blue over here. And as far as detail goes, even though there's an 8 megapixel on the S24 FE, I think it's held up okay against the 10 megapixel on the S21 Ultra. More than okay, I would say. I would say it's doing a decent enough job that you could sort of use this no problem. Maybe I've been too harsh on the 3 times. No, I haven't. At 10 times, again, kind of surprised. The 10 times on the S21 Ultra should be far and away better because it's pure optical zoom. Whereas I think the S24 FE using software has actually done a pretty good job. I would say the S21 Ultra is a little bit washed out. I actually prefer the S24 FE, even at zoom. Like, I think you obviously see a bit more noise with the FE, but it's not bad when it's not in that zoomed in state. This is a 3 times shot here of the flowers from before. Again, I would probably say it's pretty even, which is a testament to the FE, to be honest. As far as processing goes, everything looks above board. Only differences, again, being the sky and the dynamic range being a slightly different sort of tone. At 10 times here, this is probably where you can see the strength of the Ultra. It is a little bit flat in color profile, but the detail is strong compared to the detail on the Fan Edition. Definitely would take the detail on the Ultra. And then at the football, you saw where we were sitting. We were quite far back. We were in the upper tiers of Suncorp Stadium, and I wanted to test out the zoom to get onto the field. This is a 10 times shot. Again, the S21 Ultra, it's kind of washed out, but much more detailed. When you go in on the people in the crowd, the S21 Ultra just has a much better detail sort of profile, whereas the S24 FE is just watercolors. They're not people, as far as I'm concerned. And even on the pitch, the S24 FE has really tried to process it heavily, whereas the S21 Ultra probably under-processed it. So they're probably not both good photos, which is disappointing. This is the 3 times from the same spot. Again, I would probably say that the colors difference is evident, but also probably in the pitch, I would say the S24 FE is bringing more out with the 3 times at that level of zoom. And then thought going to 30, because why not? And again, this is probably where you see the strength of a 10 times camera, because you can retain the detail on the pitch a lot more, and you can see, albeit noisily, the cameras sort of behind it as well that are sort of capturing the action. Tried a couple more. You can see more details of the faces on the Ultra versus the FE being like no expressions, just like old PlayStation 1 graphics. Again, that's PlayStation 1 graphics. That's maybe PS3. Yeah, 100%. Flicking over into video, I think the biggest thing is those tonal processing differences are still evident. But the thing that I really noticed is the stabilization. The S24 FE is just far better. Samsung have advanced their stabilization algorithms, but also the hardware to sort of help stabilize the camera far away compared to what they used to do. So that is where the biggest jump when it comes to 4K 30 video is stabilization. So for video, S24 FE, hands down. When it comes to photos, It's really much of a muchness. Some have advantages with the Ultra, some with the FE. It'll just be down to how you use your phone and the output that you want to get. So whilst we've looked at that, it's not all about output. Output can tell you a little bit of the story. And yes, the output actually held up okay on the S24 FE, even with the worst hardware flanking the main camera. But the thing that this thing has that the S21 Ultra doesn't is the extensive camera modes. The S24 FE just has way more camera modes on offer. You've got the dual recording, which for video means you can record from 2 rear cameras at the same time. You have the better single take, which allows you to use the ultra wide and the 3x and the 2x crop whilst you're actually capturing single take content. You've got 8K 30 on here, whereas then you've got 8K 24 on here. There's just a lot more flexibility when it comes to video. Things like auto framing and super steady are better. It offers you more. And that is all down to the chipset that's on board here. The Exynos 2400E just has more power and capability to offer those types of features, whereas this, using the Exynos 2100, just doesn't have that. Even the Snapdragon version of this isn't capable of what this is. And at this point, it's no contest when it comes to performance overall, not just in camera. The Exynos 2100, whilst it sort of clawed back some of the ill-gotten reviews that the Exynos 990 got, it just didn't do enough. The Snapdragon variant, a lot of people did enjoy, and the Exynos 700 I was a fan of, but it just wasn't enough to sort of give people peace of mind that Exynos was back. However, the Exynos 2400E on here is great. It performs everything better, literally everything. I didn't bother with any benchmarks or comparisons of anything. I just know, just from using the two phones side by side, this offers a more fluid, more sort of responsive experience with its version of oneui. The S21 Ultra definitely isn't a slouch. It's a 3-year-old phone. It's going to still be perfectly capable of performing, but Samsung just got more out of and give you more with this, and it'll last longer. This has got 7 years of OS updates, whereas this is pretty much on its last legs regarding operating systems. And with Galaxy AI becoming a big part of Samsung's device launches moving forward, this will support it for longer and give you those features. It already does. There's Galaxy AI on here. It's nowhere to be seen on the S21 Ultra. There is one factor though that should be considered at least a little bit: S Pen support. The S21 Ultra supports Samsung's S Pens. It doesn't come with the phone, and there's absolutely no slot to put it in, but it can be used on the display. So if you are an S Pen user and you like the idea of that, then this can complete the package for you and still give you a lot. So where does that leave this discussion? It pains me to say it, as much as I love this design of the S21 Ultra, you probably should get this instead. This just needs to sail off into a nice gentle retirement, and then this should pick up and live the life that this has already had. Look, of course, realistically speaking, the S21 Ultra will do just fine for the next 3 years. Absolutely no problem. And this is just a discussion that if you are considering a phone now, rather than buying an older refurbished S21 Ultra, look to pick up an S24 FE, because you'll get a longer lifespan out of it. And it's a big improvement in most of the categories that matter about a smartphone. Let me know which one you choose in the comments below. Hit subscribe whilst you're down there, and I'll happily see you guys in the next one. You!